In today's video, we're going to be diving into the upcoming pattern. We do have some tropical concerns. We now have a high risk of development in the Southern Caribbean, a code red, 70% chance of development according to the National Hurricane Center. So we're going to be looking at that towards the end of the video, looking at the spaghetti model guidance here in the beginning. We also have much needed rain potentially heading towards now the eastern United States, as I've been predicting for a while now. Multiple very strong low pressure systems are expected to take place across the central and eastern states, bringing cold fronts with them. This will bring about, I would say, near normal temperatures, not necessarily super far below normal temperatures, especially not for any considerable amount of time. And that's only going for the next week and a half, maybe extending towards 2 weeks. So it's not a super long-term forecast, but at least for the near term, that is the overall look. So let's just dive into things and take a look at it. And we sure enough have a lot of these models now becoming really on board with something happening here. We do, unfortunately and very concerningly, get quite a bit of development on this portion of the models. As we get into that northern Gulf of Mexico, we see a lot of these become stronger, indicated by the greens, yellows, even reds kind of mixed in there. That's going to indicate some stronger storms, not necessarily, earth-shattering, but it is definitely on the stronger side and definitely intensifying by that point as well. We do see this European model that we're looking at now actually folding a little bit to the GFS model. We see this kind of northeasterly direction before curving towards the Gulf of Mexico. The mean average going between Cuba and the Yucatan Peninsula, although I should say we have plenty of these heading over Cuba, plenty of them heading over the Yucatan Peninsula here, but the vast majority head in between, and the mean average of all of them would also be somewhere here between those two areas. Obviously that has implications because this land interaction would hold back development, but if it goes in the middle, we will probably see a lot less of that kind of hindrance of development. So big implications there. Here's the GFS model, which again still has a little bit more of an easterly flow here before curving back towards the west. But the European model is much more on board with this one now, kind of as we expected. I always kind of said and say that even though one model has been historically, at least near term, been the better one, that doesn't mean that it is always going to be right. But I think that we see the European model folding overall to what the GFS model has been calling for a while now, which would be a win here for this particular model. And although we have a much larger spread as far as where these models are taking this storm, much further east into Cuba and much further south into the Yucatan Peninsula, the mean average is still going to be somewhere in the middle there, potentially through that sweet spot, if you will, area between the Yucatan and Cuba there. But again, a lot more potential for a southern track through the Yucatan Peninsula and into the southern Gulf, or perhaps a more northern flow over Cuba and towards Florida. We do also have a few of these that are heading through the Gulf here and then curving into Florida. We also have a lot of interaction with, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and a couple kind of just meandering their way into southern Texas. So what this would do is basically put the whole U.S. Gulf Coast on high alert for a tropical system potentially moving into the area. We're going to continue to track this. Again, we will look at the National Hurricane Center at the end of this video as well. Let's just move into the upcoming pattern. And as I make this video, we do have a pretty strong, hefty system moving on shore to the Pacific Northwest. Rainfall for the coastal areas and lower elevations, while we have snowfall happening throughout the Cascades and northern Rockies there. As we move towards tomorrow on Saturday, November 2nd, I can't believe we're already into November here. We do see some low pressure taking place across the four corner states and to the south of it here. So this broad low pressure, and it is causing kind of an upswell of activity throughout the southern plains and central plains there, which could bring about some thunderstorm activity, maybe even severe weather. That's all going to be something to kind of watch for. The west here, we're seeing more sporadic and lighter showers with some snow showers still for the higher elevations. That is the overall look here. And as we just keep this going towards Sunday on November 3rd, we see a stronger low begins to develop over eastern Colorado. Again, this northerly flow of all of this activity is continuing. So we see thunderstorms and showers throughout this pocket to the east of that low, while we have kind of a sinking motion behind it, which is very typical. And this brings about cooler conditions for the west, but not only that, snowfall throughout a lot of the mountainous west is occurring. Again, severe weather and thunderstorms would not be a shocker here, especially in the southern area of this more eastern quadrant of precipitation. Your jet stream looks about how we've been expecting: a trough out west, big ridge for the central states, and slightly descending towards the east, but still, it's going to be fairly mild here for a lot of these eastern areas. Not quite as much as this area where we have this severe rising throughout the central states, but it should still be quite decent weather. The good thing is this doesn't bring about hot weather this time of year. We're already in November. It's going to be more like room temperature or a little bit above it. Very comfortable weather. So I don't think anybody would be super angry about that, obviously. Let's take a look at Monday on the 4th of November, and this is when our very interesting transfer of energy occurs. If you've been watching our daily videos, you know that this is our low that basically moved in from eastern Colorado, but what's going to happen is very confusing. It's going to kind of transfer this energy back to the south again for a second go around here with a low over Oklahoma, and that one's, you guessed it, going to move back up to where this original low is. So try to make sense of this without any audio there, without me explaining. Try to make sense of what this means. But that's basically what's going to happen. We'll take it hour by hour so you guys can see. I think the interesting thing here is that we do see some warm front type action happening in a lot of these areas. It's trying to come together. And we also have a cold front, you know, kind of trying to develop in a lot of these areas. So we should see a well-structured low once we end up here with a really, really decent warm front, cold front look. That is what I'm expecting to see here. We do see snowfall continuing for the four corner states. Again, thunderstorms and showers here throughout the southeast quadrant. I think especially in here, thunderstorms and severe weather could be possible for areas like Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Missouri, maybe even southern Illinois. So we'll be watching for that. Meanwhile, we have another strong storm system moving onshore to the northwest. So we see rainfall again in the lower areas and snowfall for a lot of these mountainous and more northern areas. Again, we'll take this hour by hour, but watch this one kind of melt away and give the energy to this one in the south. This is by the time we're reaching about 7 p.m. Already this southern one is now the primary low. We know this because it is 1,002 millibar low pressure. The one to the north now 1,003. So that makes this southern one the stronger one, the dominant one. As we move towards 10 p.m., we see they're about equal. But really, it starts to go in the wrong direction here. Well, you know, kind of what we've been expecting. 1,004 with this eastern one, 1,002 over Iowa. So now it's breaking away as the clearly dominant low by the time we're reaching about 1 a.m. 4 a.m. here, 1,001 versus 1,005. So getting even further apart. Clearly, this is the stronger low here over Wisconsin. A clearly defined cold front look here to the south and a really decent warm front look there to the east. So we see rising warm air out ahead of that low and that cold front. And then we have this kind of sinking cooler air. It's not too cold, but it is cooler moving through. It's certainly cooler than these very far above normal temperatures to the east here. And this creates the potential for a widespread severe weather event. I am, you know, expecting that to be possible early next week. This looks very intense throughout areas of Iowa, Illinois, Missouri, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas, maybe even going to be expanding into Louisiana. Unfortunately, this looks like a pretty intense thunderstorm setup. Let's keep going hour by hour. This is by the time we're reaching 7 a.m., by the time we're reaching about 10 a.m., 1 p.m. here on Tuesday, and then finally here we are at the afternoon, about 4 p.m. on Tuesday, November 5th. We see this low is located over Michigan. Again, very, very intense cold front look there with a warm front up to the north here. So we will see this kind of surging warmth underneath into the east of that low and cold front with the sinking cooler air to the west of things, but not by a severe margin. It's not like these blues up here are sinking way down into the central plains. It's just not doing so. But when we compare it to these very, very warm temperatures here in the east, this is a decent little cool down behind that, regardless of if it brings below normal temperatures or not. Meanwhile, speaking of the kind of like northwest here, we do see a pretty decent snow system still going on for the Cascades, Rockies, and areas of Canada. Pretty intense look there. Also, by Tuesday, we see our tropical low here to the south of Cuba, so keep that in mind as well. Let's take this towards Wednesday afternoon, and what we see is that this storm has kind of gone right over that eastern or western tip of Cuba there. A lot of our precipitation is now over the eastern states by Wednesday, so midweek on November 6th here. up and down that eastern area. We do see a little bit of a sinking motion in this cold air, and it is trying to slowly move eastward with some warmer air building for the west here. So this would typically bring, you know, a little bit more of a hefty cool down to the east, but still the jet stream by this point is something like this, still rising throughout the east. Now the most major ridge is over the west without a doubt, where we see this one surging up into Canada. But that intense cold is really just sitting over the Rockies for the most part, where we do have some snowfall still ongoing, especially the four corner states there. Let's take a look at Thursday here, Thursday afternoon, and we see the southeast continue to get quite a bit of precipitation, and really we get okay amounts throughout some of the mid-Atlantic, northeast here. I think anything would be better than nothing at this point, and that needs to be kind of the mindset. We still have kind of a cutoff low here where we have this snowfall ongoing still for the four corner states, but in reality, the jet stream is trying to set up a little bit of a trough in the east, at least a big ridge in the west that would bring the cooler temperatures into the east. But again, nothing really super intense is occurring here. This is Friday on November 8th, and again, you can make the argument that there's more of a trough in the east here, but really it's still going to be quite mild, is kind of what I'm seeing here. It's the west that's just so warm by this point that it's kind of making the east look cold, but it's definitely not. Another interesting thing is, if you're keeping up with our videos every single day, there is a Hudson Bay low here on the southern end. Typically this season, this has been bringing our major cold fronts that brings that cold air towards the east, but we're just not seeing it happen really on this one. So very interesting. Some storminess for the south central states, snowfall in the four corners, rainfall, maybe even thunderstorms for the south central plains again. This is the look by the time we're reaching Saturday afternoon on the 9th. Again, nothing too intense as far as that low is concerned. We do have a little bit of what looks to be a frontal boundary here with some thunderstorms along it, but nothing crazy. And the Gulf states continue to see some precipitation, but a very quiet day compared to the other ones. It's Sunday the 10th here where things get really intense. We get this strengthening low. It's basically this low that's been hanging out over the four corner states, moves up into Wisconsin and Michigan, kind of on par with what we've been seeing a lot of. It does have a cold front that's trying to develop. No real warm front yet. But we do see this surge of humidity, showers, and warmth here to the east of things. So I bet we're going to see a warm front kind of try to develop there. Not really, actually. But clearly, we have this cold front here. It's now seriously pushing the cold air in. So finally, the looks of a decent cool down here. Warm air is surging up the east coast, but this cool down is coming on this model run. And we have intense precipitation along the eastern states, which, when was the last time I've been able to say that? Maybe like August? I don't know. It's been so long. But really nice to see. And then we kind of finish off the model run just like this with this look here. So your jet stream is doing something like this. That cooldown is going to basically reach the east coast in the hours following this. We have very intense low over the southern Hudson Bay. Cold front here with high precipitation. That is all pushing through, and we actually have more storminess here for the Pacific Northwest as well. So total precipitation, all of a sudden, I mean, we still get the very large amounts over the Northwest here. We still get the very large amounts through the plains, Midwest, Great Lakes. But now we're starting to get decent amounts, especially in the southeast here, but even the mid-Atlantic and northeast, seeing perhaps half an inch to an inch over the next 10 days, which is much better than things have been. These southeast areas, we're maybe looking at 1, 2, maybe even 3 inches of precipitation. So we could turn around this very serious, very strange, almost nationwide drought that we've been seeing. I looked at the drought maps. I should have shown it in this video, but it is alarming how coast to coast there's just droughts popping up all over the place. And I don't think that surprises anybody because the precipitation has been so low. It's been so low. I think it was Philadelphia, I read about how they just closed out their longest period of no precipitation, basically, since they've started recording data. So seriously dry, almost historically dry conditions for many throughout the United States. And it's not just the Philly area in particular. I mean, it is widespread dryness, again, for a lot of the nation. Super weird stuff. Here is the anomalies, and again, we're looking at decent amounts to maybe even above average for the Pacific Northwest here. 4 corner states into the plains and Midwest and Great Lakes here. Very far above average amounts here. Looking very good out there. And now the southeast in here, at least decent, but Most of these areas are pretty far above normal. And even for these drier pockets in here, just like this for the Ohio Valley, kind of like mid-Atlantic, southeast coast there, and then throughout the mid-Atlantic and northeast, these areas were in the darker browns and reds, and we're seeing them kind of get into the lighter browns where you're only about, half an inch to maybe maximum an inch below average over the next 10 days. This is going in the right direction. So just to give you guys like a positive idea of the precipitation upcoming, I think that this is really moving in a positive direction for pretty much most folks at this point. Total snowfall is off the charts. We see large amounts for the Cascades here. Don't know why my pen just got so small. Let's try to fix that real quick. So just scroll the screen down. Here we go. We see the Cascades seeing a foot, maybe 2 or 3 there in the Washington Cascades. The Sierra Nevada, we're looking at inches up to about 10 inches perhaps. Northern Rockies, maybe even the Central Rockies here, we're looking at 1, 2, maybe 3 feet. But down here in the Four Corner states, especially for Colorado, but we do see some of this extending southward into New Mexico and even northward there into southern Wyoming. We are seeing likely, for a lot of these areas, 2, 3, 4, I don't know, maybe 5 feet of snowfall for some of these Colorado mountains if this European model run is correct. So a massive surge of expected snowfall for the Colorado area is kind of in the works on this particular model run, and that would be crazy for those ski resorts out there, which there is very, very many of them, by the way, in Colorado and even Utah there as well. I know every state out there has ski resorts, but I feel like Colorado has the most perhaps. So tons of resorts out there are going to be super happy about that. Here is the temperature pattern where, again, definitely a cool down here coming Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We see that for the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic, but this warm up comes and it really sticks around. We see this for the, let's see, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th. And again, here comes that more major cool down. It doesn't look very blue yet, but the further south it goes, the more intense it's going to be. And I suspect that if we saw a setup like this particular model showed, we're going to start to see those blues and maybe even greens move down, as that's a pretty intense look. But out ahead of it, you almost always see this huge surge of warmth out ahead of these stronger cold fronts. As it's kind of dying down and getting pushed out, we have this warm front drawing up the southerly air, and you get this intense warmth right before it cools down. Definitely an intense look for the eastern states. The GFS model here is really in agreement. I mean, we get this cool down, warm up, the last days, maybe even a week plus. We get a northeast cool down there around the 9th, 10th time frame, as you can see. We warm back up, and we stick around with the warmth. I mean, this is the 15th, 16th, 17th. We finally start to get some cooler temperatures east of the Rockies here, for the plains at least. Could be moving eastward, especially a sign of this moving eastward would be the warming out west. But time will tell. This could be completely incorrect. Who knows? So let's look at the 7-day graphical tropical weather outlook real quickly. And we do have multiple areas to discuss today. The one of primary interest, though, is going to be this southern Caribbean area, where we do now have a 70% chance, high risk of formation over the next 7 days. That is up 1% from yesterday, and up, I think, or 10% from yesterday, sorry, and then 30% from 2 days ago. So we're seeing a pretty big increase here over the last couple of days. 30% chance over the next 48 hours. So we do have some chance in the very next couple of days of development there. This area near the Bahamas sits at a 10% chance of development, both over the next 2 and 7 days. So we'll watch that closely. Then this area in the northern Atlantic now sits at a 40% chance, both through the next 2 and 7 days of development. Really need to watch that one. That's far up there for this time of year. Would be crazy to see that develop, but anything's possible. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Be sure to subscribe, as we do upload every single day, and we will keep you guys up to date with all of these tropical concerns, cold fronts, storms, droughts, everything. We love to discuss it all, so we will keep you guys up to date with all of that. If you want to get notifications when we upload, be sure to hit that bell icon down below as well. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it. Leave a comment down below, and I'll